Stop scrolling for just a moment because misreading someone's character doesn't cost a little. It costs your time, your trust, and often your peace. Most people don't reveal who they are when life is easy. They reveal it when they don't get what they want, when no one is watching, and when their ego is touched. You don't need years to figure someone out. You need the right questions asked at the right moments. Centuries ago, Stoic thinkers understood this deeply. They didn't study personalities, they studied reactions. How someone responds to pressure, power, correction, and denial tells you more than any promise ever could. Today, I'll share 5 Stoic questions that quietly expose someone's true character, without confrontation, without drama, and without guessing. Stay with me. The first question alone has saved people years of regret. Part 1. The question of motivation. Before we begin, pause. Not to scroll, not to multitask, just pause. Take a slow breath in and let it go. Because this question, this first one, quietly decides who stays in your life and who eventually costs you more than you realize. Here it is. Why does someone act the way they do when no one is watching? Not when there's applause. Not when there's a reward. Not when they're being measured, praised, or judged. But when the room is empty, when the phone is off, when the outcome doesn't benefit them. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he understood something most people never do. Character is not proven in moments of pressure. It's revealed in moments of invisibility. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But there's a quieter implication hidden in those words. If someone needs outside events, praise, reward, fear, or attention to behave well, then goodness is not their nature. It's their costume. Pause here, breathe in and out. Think of the last time someone did something kind. Ask yourself honestly, would they still have done it if no one noticed? This is the Stoic question of motivation, and it cuts deeper than most people are prepared for. In ancient Rome, Marcus observed men who spoke beautifully about virtue, but only practiced it when eyes were on them. He also observed others quiet, unnoticed, who acted with discipline even when it cost them. Marcus admired the second group, not because they were perfect, but because their motivation came from principle, not performance. Modern psychology confirms this ancient insight. A 2019 study in behavioral science found that people who act primarily from intrinsic motivation, internal values, rather than external rewards are 42% more consistent in ethical behavior when supervision is removed. In contrast, those driven by recognition or status showed sharp drops in integrity once accountability disappeared. In simple terms, remove the spotlight and the truth steps forward. Say it with me. Character does not need an audience. Pause. Slow your breathing. Now let me tell you a story. Imagine 2 colleagues staying late at work. One stays because the boss might notice. The other stays because the task needs to be done properly. Both look identical on the surface. Same hours, same effort, same results. But one is acting for approval. The other is acting from duty. Marcus Aurelius would tell you these 2 people are not the same. Because when the boss leaves, when the reward disappears, only one of them will remain reliable. This is why motivation matters more than talent, more than intelligence, more than charm. A charming person with weak motivation will eventually betray you quietly or loudly. A disciplined person with quiet motivation will often protect you without ever announcing it. Marcus warned himself daily against confusing appearance with substance. In his private journal, never intended for publication, he wrote reminders like, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Notice the absence of witnesses. No audience, no applause. Just action aligned with value. Pause again. Breathe in and out. Here's how you test motivation in real life without interrogations, without drama. You observe what someone does when there is nothing to gain. Do they still show up on time when no one checks? Do they still keep their word when breaking it would be easier? Do they still treat others fairly when there's no consequence for not doing so? These moments are small, almost invisible, and that's why they matter. Stoicism teaches that virtue is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. Seneca wrote, "A good character is not formed by ease, but by discipline." Discipline without witnesses is rare. And because it's rare, it's valuable. Reset here. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out fully. Now let's confront an uncomfortable truth. Many people are not attached to doing good. They are attached to looking good. They help when it's seen. They apologize when pressured. They behave when consequences are clear. But when there's no reward, no threat, no reputation at stake, their behavior changes. Marcus Aurelius understood this trap. That's why he reminded himself not to act for praise, even internal praise. He wrote, "Be satisfied with doing what is right, not with being admired for it, not with being thanked for it, just doing it." Here's a practical example. Imagine someone who speaks passionately about honesty, but exaggerates stories when it benefits them, or hides inconvenient truths when exposure would be uncomfortable. Their motivation is not honesty, it's image. Stoicism teaches you to notice this without resentment, not to judge, not to attack, just to see clearly. Clarity is protection. Say it quietly, "I observe," without rushing to conclude. Pause. Breathe. Here is the Stoic exercise for this part. For the next 7 days, pick one person you interact with regularly, not to criticize, not to diagnose. Just observe. Watch how they act when no one is watching, when credit disappears, when effort is inconvenient, when kindness costs them something. Write down not mentally but physically what you see. Patterns will emerge, and those patterns will teach you more than years of conversation ever could. Marcus Aurelius believed that wisdom comes from attention, not intelligence. He trained himself to see reality as it is, not as he wished it to be. And here's the deeper lesson, one most people miss. This question is not only about others, it is about you. Why do you act when no one is watching? When no one will know if you cut corners? When no one will praise your restraint? When no one will reward your discipline? This is where self-respect is born. Because if your actions collapse without an audience, then your peace will always depend on approval. Marcus warned against this dependency. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." Pause. Breathe in, breathe out. Let this land. When you begin acting from internal alignment instead of external reward, something changes. Your behavior stabilizes. Your decisions become quieter but firmer, and people begin to feel it. They may not understand it, but they respect it. In the next part, we will go deeper. We will explore what happens when power enters the equation, why some people become better with authority and others reveal something far darker. Stay with me, because the next question reveals what motivation alone cannot. Part 2, the question of power. Before we continue, pause, take a slow breath in, and let it go, because this question has destroyed more relationships, careers, and empires than any other. Here it is. What does someone become when they gain power? Not when they are struggling, not when they are equal, but when they are above you, when they no longer need your approval, when consequences no longer apply the same way. Marcus Aurelius learned this lesson early. He did not rise to power suddenly. He watched it shape others first, and what he discovered was unsettling. Power does not change people. Power removes the mask. Marcus wrote, "Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial." He was not being pessimistic. He was being prepared. Because authority reveals what pressure cannot. Pause here. Breathe in. Breathe out. Think of someone you've known who changed after gaining power. A promotion, money, influence, status. At first it looked like success. Then something else appeared. Impatience, entitlement, dismissiveness, a tone they never used before. That wasn't growth. That was exposure. Stoicism teaches a hard truth. A person's character is not tested when they are powerless. It is exposed when they are free to act without fear. Modern psychology agrees. A well-known set of studies from the University of California found that individuals in positions of power were 3 times more likely to interrupt others, twice as likely to ignore advice, and significantly more likely to dehumanize those beneath them, unless they possess strong internal moral frameworks. In simple terms, without discipline, power amplifies ego. With discipline, power amplifies responsibility. Say it with me. Power magnifies what already exists. Pause. Slow your breathing. Marcus Aurelius ruled during war, famine, betrayal, and plague. Yet those closest to him noted something unusual. He became calmer as his authority increased. He listened more. He spoke less. He punished reluctantly and forgave deliberately. Why? Because Marcus understood that power is not permission, it is burden. He wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less, or more precisely, do what's essential." Power tempts people to do more, to dominate, to interfere, to control. Wisdom does the opposite. It simplifies. Here's how you read someone's soul through power, without confrontation, without risk. You watch how they treat people who cannot resist them. Subordinates, waiters, employees, students, children. Do they become more patient or more demanding? Do they listen more or interrupt more? Do they protect or exploit? Marcus Aurelius watched this closely. He believed that cruelty toward the weak was the clearest sign of inner disorder. Reset here. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let me give you a story. Two managers receive the same promotion. The first becomes distant, cold, transactional. Meetings become about dominance, not clarity. Mistakes are punished publicly. Credit is claimed upward, blame pushed downward. The second manager changes too, but differently. They slow down. They clarify expectations. They shield their team from chaos above. Both gain power. Only one gained wisdom. Marcus Aurelius would tell you, one sees power as status. The other sees it as stewardship. Say it quietly. Power reveals intent. Pause. Breathe. Here's the stoic question you ask, sometimes out loud, often silently. What do you do when no one can stop you? That is the real test. Not what someone says about fairness, but how they behave when fairness costs them nothing. Epictetus wrote, "Do not seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." Those unfit for power wish the world would obey them. Those fit for power adjust themselves. Now, an uncomfortable truth. Some people chase power not to serve, but to heal insecurity. They want authority to silence fear. They want control to replace self-command. When these people gain power, relationships decay. They test boundaries. They demand loyalty without reciprocity. They confuse obedience with respect. Marcus Aurelius warned against this inner weakness. He wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself, what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I'm about to criticize? Power without self-examination breeds tyranny, large or small." Pause again. Breathe in. Breathe out. Here's a real-world example you may recognize. Someone gains influence in a social group. They begin deciding who belongs, who is heard, who is ignored. At first it's subtle, then patterns form. This is not leadership, it is domination. Stoicism draws a sharp line between the two. Leadership requires restraint. Domination feeds on impulse. Data supports this distinction. A 2021 workplace psychology review showed that leaders who delayed decisions and sought dissent were rated 31% more trustworthy and 27% more effective than those who acted quickly to assert control. Why? Because restraint signals confidence. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He delayed anger. He questioned his own judgment. He resisted the intoxicating pull of being obeyed. He wrote, "Do not be overheard complaining, not even to yourself." That wasn't suppression, it was discipline. Reset here. Breathe slowly. Now here is the practical stoic exercise for this part. The next time you see someone gain power, small or large, observe three things. 1. Do they become more humane or more mechanical? 2. Do they take responsibility or shift blame? 3. Do they create safety or fear? Write down what you see. Patterns will emerge quickly. And remember, this question also turns inward. What happens when you gain power, when you are in control of time, money, decisions, access? Do you become calmer or more reactive? Do you listen more or interrupt more? Marcus Aurelius held himself to this standard relentlessly. He believed that authority without virtue was a liability. Pause, breathe in, breathe out. Here is the deeper insight. Power is not a reward for good character. It is a test of it. Those who pass grow quieter. Those who fail grow louder. In the next part, we will examine what happens when power is threatened, when someone is wrong, when their ego is challenged, when they must choose between truth and self-protection. Stay with me, because the next question exposes something even more dangerous than power. Part 3, the question of ego and error. Before we go any further, pause. Take a slow breath in and let it go, because this question, more than power, more than motivation, reveals who someone really is when their inner image is threatened. Here it is. What does a person do when they realize they are wrong? Not when the mistake is small, not when it's harmless, but when their ego is exposed, when their self-image cracks, when being wrong costs them pride. Marcus Aurelius understood this painfully well. As emperor, he was surrounded by men who agreed with him publicly and resented him privately. He learned quickly that the most dangerous people were not those who made mistakes, but those who could not admit them. He wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after." That sentence alone separates the wise from the unsafe. Pause here. Breathe in. Breathe out. Most people think strength means never being wrong. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Strength is the ability to face error without self-destruction. Modern psychology confirms this. A large meta-analysis published in Personality and Social Psychology Review found that individuals with high ego defensiveness were 58% more likely to respond to mistakes with aggression, denial, or blame shifting. Meanwhile, individuals with strong internal identity, what psychologists call secure self-concept, were far more likely to correct errors calmly and improve performance afterward. In simple terms, fragile egos protect themselves. Strong minds correct themselves. Say it with me. Correction is not humiliation, it is refinement. Pause. Slow your breathing. Let me tell you a story. Two people receive the same criticism. The first reacts instantly. They explain. They justify. They raise their voice just enough to reclaim dominance. The second stays quiet, listens, asks one question, then says, "You might be right." Outwardly, the first looks confident. The second looks vulnerable. But Marcus Aurelius would tell you the truth. The first is defending an image. The second is protecting reality. Stoicism does not fear being wrong because it does not build identity on being right. Marcus reminded himself constantly, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Most people do the opposite. They turn every correction into a threat, every disagreement into disrespect, every mistake into an attack. Reset here. Breathe in slowly, breathe out fully. Here's how you read character through error quietly, safely. You disagree gently, on something small, low stakes, and then you watch. Do they become curious or hostile? Do they ask questions or search for blame? Do they correct the mistake or rewrite the story? Marcus Aurelius believed that how someone handles being wrong predicts how they will handle conflict, leadership, and intimacy. Because if a person cannot admit error, they cannot grow. And if they cannot grow, they will eventually control, manipulate, or punish instead. Epictetus warned, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Pause. Let that settle. Now, an uncomfortable truth. Many people mistake confidence for ego rigidity. They say, "I'm just direct. I stand my ground. I don't let anyone challenge me." But Stoicism sees through this. True confidence does not fear correction. It does not rush to defend. It does not collapse under disagreement. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome at its most complex. Yet he kept a private journal where he criticized himself relentlessly. Not to shame himself, but to stay aligned. He wrote, "Be strict with yourself and tolerant of others." Notice the direction of discipline. Inward first, outward second. Reset again. Breathe in, breathe out. Let's talk about a situation many people recognize. You point out a small inconsistency to someone close to you, maybe a friend, a partner, a colleague. Suddenly the tone changes. They bring up old issues. They question your intentions. They make it about you instead of the issue. That shift tells you everything. This is not about the mistake. This is about ego protection. Stoicism teaches that ego is not confidence, it is fear wearing armor. And fear when cornered becomes dangerous. Research backs this up. Studies on narcissistic injury show that individuals with fragile self-esteem respond to perceived criticism with retaliation, withdrawal, or emotional punishment. Not because they are cruel, but because they are internally unstable. Marcus Aurelius knew this long before psychology named it. That's why he warned himself not to react to insult or correction. He wrote, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings." Pause. Breathe. Now here is the stoic exercise for this part. For the next week, practice voluntary error admission. Once per day, just once acknowledge a small mistake out loud. No excuses, no explanations. Simply say I was wrong. I missed that. You're right. Observe what happens inside you. The initial discomfort, the urge to defend, and then relief. This practice weakens ego rigidity and strengthens self-command. Marcus Aurelius believed self-command was the highest form of power. And now the most important insight of this part. The people who react worst to being wrong are often the most dangerous to trust, not because they are evil, but because they will sacrifice truth to protect identity. They will rewrite events, shift blame, punish honesty. Stoicism teaches you to notice this early before cost accumulates. Say it with me, I value truth over comfort. Pause. Breathe in, breathe out. In the next part, we will examine what happens when ego is threatened in a different way, when someone does not get what they want, when you say no, and how denial reveals character faster than agreement ever could. Stay with me, because the next question exposes entitlement. Part 4. The question of denial. Before we continue, pause, take a slow breath in, and let it go, because this question is where many illusions finally collapse. Here it is. Who does someone become when you say no to them, not when you agree, not when you comply, not when you make life easy, but when you refuse, when you set a boundary, when you deny access? Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. As emperor, he learned that agreement reveals nothing. Refusal reveals everything. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Notice what he did not include. He did not say if it will disappoint people. He did not say if it will create tension. Stoicism is not built on pleasing others. It is built on alignment with reason. Pause here. Breathe in. Breathe out. Most people are pleasant when you say yes. That is not character. That is convenience. Character appears the moment comfort is removed. Modern psychology calls this entitlement response. Research on boundary enforcement shows that individuals with high entitlement levels react to refusal with anger, guilt-inducing language withdrawal, or punishment behaviors at rates nearly twice as high as those with low entitlement. In simple terms, when you say no, entitled people feel wronged, not disappointed, wronged. Say it with me. Denial exposes entitlement. Pause. Slow your breathing. Let me give you a familiar story. You finally say no to a favor, to extra work, to emotional labor. At first, there is silence. Then something changes. The tone shifts. Messages become shorter. Kindness becomes conditional. Distance appears. Nothing explicit is said, but something is withdrawn. This is not misunderstanding. This is punishment. Marcus Aurelius would recognize this instantly. He warned himself never to become resentful when others reacted poorly to boundaries. Why? Because their reaction was information. He wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed." The harm is not in their reaction. The harm is in mistaking it for love. Reset here. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out fully. Here is how Stoicism teaches you to read denial responses. When you say no, observe three things. 1. Do they respect the boundary immediately? 2. Do they seek understanding or control? 3. Do they remain consistent or withdraw value? Respect looks quiet. Entitlement looks emotional. A respectful person may feel disappointed, but they stay regulated. An entitled person escalates because access was never a request. It was an expectation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In modern terms, do not mirror entitlement with explanation. Do not negotiate boundaries with guilt. Pause again. Breathe. Here's an example from leadership. A manager asks an employee to stay late again. The employee calmly says no. A healthy leader adjusts. A fragile leader retaliates. They question commitment. They withhold opportunities. They subtly punish refusal. This has nothing to do with performance. It has everything to do with control. Stoicism teaches you to recognize this early, because people who cannot tolerate your no will eventually resent your yes. Say it quietly. Those who respect me do not require access. Pause. Breathe in, breathe out. Let's talk about relationships. When you stop being endlessly available, some people accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, of being selfish. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others. Boundaries feel cruel only to those who benefited from your lack of them. Psychologists call this boundary backlash. Studies show that when individuals enforce new boundaries, social pushback peaks within the first 2 to 3 weeks, then stabilizes as dynamics reset. In other words, discomfort is temporary, clarity is permanent. Reset here. Breathe slowly. Now here is the Stoic exercise for this part. For the next 5 days, say no once per day to something unnecessary. Not aggressively, not dramatically. Simply, I won't be able to do that. No explanation, no justification. Observe the response. Notice who respects you more. Notice who pulls away. Notice who tries to negotiate your peace. Marcus Aurelius believed that self-command required friction. Without resistance, discipline does not form. Now the deeper truth. Some people only remain close as long as you are useful. When usefulness ends, so does attachment. This is painful, but it is also liberating. Marcus Aurelius accepted this cost. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me we love ourselves more than others, yet care more about their opinion than our own." Denial corrects this imbalance. Pause. Breathe. Here is the final insight of this part. The way someone reacts to your no is the way they will react to your independence. Those who respect autonomy grow closer. Those who crave control fall away. This is not loss. This is sorting. In the final part, we will step back and look at the full picture. What remains when motivation, power, ego, and entitlement are stripped away? Who is left when nothing can be taken, demanded, or controlled? Stay with me, because the final question reveals character in its purest form. Night, Part 5, the question of character. Before we finish, pause, take a slow breath in, and let it go. Because this final question does not test intelligence. It does not test success. It does not test confidence. It tests what remains when nothing can be gained. Here it is, the fifth and final question. Who does someone become when nothing is left to take? No approval, no power, no advantage, no leverage, just them. Marcus Aurelius believed this was the ultimate measure of character. Not who someone is when climbing, but who they are when standing alone. He wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." Pause here. Breathe in. Breathe out. Throughout this series, you've seen 4 layers stripped away. Motivation, what drives action when unseen. Power, what emerges when authority is granted. Ego, how error is handled. Denial, what happens when access is refused. Now we arrive at the core. Character is what remains after all these tests. Stoicism teaches that most people are composites. They are shaped by reward, by fear, by habit, by expectation. Very few are anchored. Marcus Aurelius worked relentlessly to become one of the anchored ones. Not because he was born virtuous, but because he trained himself daily. He wrote reminders to himself, not to the world. Why? Because character does not need witnesses. Say it with me. Character exists without an audience. Pause. Breathe slowly. Modern psychology supports this Stoic insight. A longitudinal study on moral consistency found that individuals with strong internal values behaved ethically even when outcomes were neutral or negative, while those with situational ethics shifted behavior based on reward probability. In simple terms, some people act rightly because it is right. Others act rightly because it pays. Remove payment and only one remains reliable. Marcus Aurelius understood this difference deeply. That's why he warned himself against becoming dependent on external validation. He wrote, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. True character unties that knot. Reset here. Breathe in, breathe out. Let me give you a final story. Imagine someone who has lost status. They are no longer needed, no longer praised, no longer invited. Two paths appear. One becomes bitter, resentful. They rewrite the past. They blame the world. The other becomes quieter but clearer. They act without expectation. They choose integrity over relevance. Marcus Aurelius would tell you the second person has won even if no one notices. Because character is not about being seen. It is about being aligned. Stoicism does not promise popularity. It promises coherence. Say it quietly, I choose alignment over applause. Pause. Breathe. Here is how you recognize true character in others. When there is nothing to gain, do they still show fairness? When no one is watching, do they still show restraint? When nothing is owed, do they still show kindness? And perhaps the hardest question of all, when they could exploit, do they choose not to? Marcus Aurelius believed restraint was the highest form of strength, not because temptation disappears, but because it is mastered. He wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. That sentence reveals everything. Character is not reaction, it is refusal. Reset again. Breathe in, breathe out. Now let's turn this question inward, where Stoicism always ends. Who are you when nothing is taken, promised, or threatened? When no one will praise your discipline? When no one will reward your honesty? When no one will punish your shortcuts? This is where your life is actually decided. Marcus Aurelius believed that self-respect is built in private moments, moments when you could betray your values and choose not to. That choice does not announce itself, but it compounds. Over time, it creates a presence people feel but cannot explain. This is why some individuals command respect without demanding it, why their words carry weight, why their silence feels solid. They are not impressive, they are integrated. Pause, breathe slowly. Here is the final Stoic exercise of this series. For the next 7 days, ask yourself one question every night. Did I act today as the person I respect, not as the person others approve of? Not as the person that avoided discomfort, but as the person aligned with reason? Write the answer down. No judgment, just truth. This practice repeated reshapes identity. Marcus Aurelius did this every night. His journal was not a diary of events, but a ledger of character. And that is why his words survive centuries. Now, before we close, let's tie everything together. The 5 questions are not tools to judge others harshly. They are lenses to see clearly, to protect your time, your energy, your trust. Most people will fail 1 or 2 of these tests. That does not make them evil, but repeated failure reveals limitation. Stoicism teaches you to accept limitation without resentment. And finally, here is the truth that makes this series complete. You do not need to expose anyone. You do not need to confront. You do not need to explain. Character reveals itself if you are patient enough to observe. Marcus Aurelius believed patience was power. He wrote, time is like a river made up of the events which happen in a violent stream. Those who know who they are stand firm as the water passes. Say it with me one last time, I observe. I choose. I remain aligned. Pause. Breathe in. Breathe out. Now I want you to commit. Comment one word that represents the character you choose to live by this week. Not a sentence. One word. Calm, discipline, integrity, restraint, focus. Choose it. Write it. Live it. And if this series helped you see more clearly, subscribe to Making Life Better. Not for motivation, but for mastery. Because Stoicism is not something you admire. It is something you live. Before you leave, pause for a moment. Which of the 5 questions hit you the hardest? Not the easiest, but the hardest. That reaction shows you exactly where growth begins. Write one word you'll live by this week: calm, discipline, boundaries, or focus, and comment it publicly, not for others, but for yourself. Commitment changes behavior. And if you're ready to stop reacting and start choosing, subscribe to Making Life Better. Not for motivation, but for mastery. Because Stoicism isn't something you admire. It's something you live.